This is the Kevin Simpson Show, expert insight and analysis from the industry's top investment professionals. If you'd like a deeper understanding of today's markets, this is the show for you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Kevin Simpson Show. We're so lucky today to have one of the most successful commodity traders ever to join us, Mr. Mark Fisher. Mark is the founder and CEO of MBF Clearing Corporations. He is a true legend on Wall Street, and he is by far, hands down, the most successful trader that's ever graced this podcast. So, Mark, thank you so much for joining us.
No problem, Jim. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. And I if you don't mind, I'm going to take you back to the beginning because, I mean, your story is just incredible. You think about it, you started as a floor runner at age 12. And when I was 12, Mark, I was like trying to put together a treehouse, like not very well. And somehow you're sitting on the floor of the COMEX. How did you make something happen like that at that age? How did you take an opportunity and turn that into something real?
Well, you know, it's a matter of being in the right place at the right time. A lot of it, you know, you make your luck or you get lucky, whatever. So I lived in the neighborhood in Long Island, and I went to a private school, and I was completely, how should I say this, hyperactive. But I was pretty intelligent because so they were happy for me not to be in school as long as I did well on every test. That's putting it mildly. So what happened was my neighbor down the block, I kept seeing him coming home with nicer and nicer cars. And I said, all right, I got to figure this out. So I go to his house and I ask him, what does he do for a living? And he says to me, what do you care what I do for a living? You know, how old are you? I said, I'm 12, 13. He shuts the door. Lucky for me, his son, who was a friend of mine, his middle son, how should I say, was a very good athlete, but academically challenged. So I went back a week later, banged on his door again. He's about to shut the door in my face again. I said, wait, don't shut the door. I have a business proposition. He goes, you have a business proposition for me? I go, yeah. He goes, what is it? I said, transfer your son to my school. I'll tutor him. He'll get through every subject, I promise you, by hook or by crook. And let's just say not by hook, not by crook. And he says, well, what do you want? I said, well, I want to come work with you. He says, you're 13 years old. What do you mean, what are you going to come work? He says, do you even know what I do? I said, it doesn't matter. I just want to figure it out. He says, well, how do you not be able to go to school? I said, trust me, school doesn't care as long as I get 100 in every exam. I have a semi-photographic memory. I just create guys. They're happy for me not to be there Monday and Fridays. So he said, okay. So the first day, he took me down to the old floor of the Commodities Exchange, where they were still writing in chalk on the blackboards.
I love it.
And that's how I got started. And when I was 14, it was the day after Thanksgiving, and not many people know this. And it was the day after Thanksgiving, and there was a snowstorm. There weren't many people there. And he says to me, okay, he goes, you see those 3 phones on the wall? If they ring, come get me. Okay. So phone rings. There's no, it's half the people on there. It's a snowstorm. Silver was at that point lock limit down, which means it was the most it could be down in a day. And phone rings, and I go in the pit, and I get him, and I go to the phone ring. He says, okay, answer the phone. He goes, you want me to answer the phone? He goes, yeah. If the guy on the other end of the phone knows you're 14, if you sound like an idiot, right? And one other thing, which I won't say, because this is
a family show.
This is a family show. He goes, you're fired. I go, I didn't even start. So I pick up the phone, and I say the name of the company, and the guy then on the phone says, who am I talking to? I said, Mark. He goes to me, how come I never heard your voice before? And I said, well, usually I'm in gold on the London, New York gold line. I made something up. And he goes, okay, how much lower silver? I said, lock limit down. He goes, how many contracts in the limit down till I find out? And then he says to me, and I'm 14 years old, 13, 14. He says to me, well, what do you think of the market? Now this guy's asking me what I think of the market. I said, listen, there's nobody here. I have to be clear. One big order, the market can go anywhere. He goes, okay. So he says, clock a ticket. So now the clerks are laughing at me, and I clock this ticket, which is an order. And he gives me this order, which is a ridiculous order, huge. And I take the order, and I go into the pit. I hand it to, my boss. And he looks at me and goes, you're fired. I go, yeah, I'm fired. He goes to me, do you know how much this is? This is crazy amount. And he goes back to the phone, and it was a real order. And it was, I won't tell you which one it was, but when the hunch tried to corner the silver market?
Of course.
Right. It was all involved in that time with a a professional trader who was one of the people who was very heavily involved. And the order was to buy the position limit in Mesa, which would be the equivalent for your viewers of someone giving an order to buy, I don't even know, 30 million shares of IBM at the market, right? And they gave it to a 14-year-old. And that's how I got started.
You're like Jesse Livermore.
Right, it was crazy. And then I was 17, and I was going to go to Brown 6-year med school. And I said, what am I doing? I'm not going to Brown 6-year med school. So I had gotten accepted to Wharton School of Business, University of Pennsylvania. So I went there, and I was 18, and I wanted to start trading because I was ready on the floor. It was crazy what was going on. If I only knew now what I knew back then, I'd have a lot more money. Anyway, so I go to my parents, and I said, listen, I need someone to open an account at a brokerage firm because I'm only 18. I can't do it. I'm going to put all the money I have made, which was a tremendous amount of money at that time, in the account. I want you to match the account. And whatever I make for myself, I keep. And whatever I make for my parents, I take half. Like a fund manager, right? And my father was in the supermarket business. I'll never forget this. My father said to me, Mark, I'm in the supermarket business. I see the money coming in dimes and quarters. I'm not letting you, gamble my money in thousands of dollars. I said, Dad, this is not gambling. I see the entire book. Think about being the biggest specialist in the most volatile commodity at the age of 8. It was crazy. So he says no. So I go, what am I going to do? So I went to my grandfather, and he said, Mark, he said, Mark, you're my favorite, but this is just too risky. So I said, Grandpa, Dad said the same thing. And he said to me, your father said the same thing? And he said, blanket, open the account. So that's what we did. So freshman year, while people were walking around with that 10 cents in their pockets, and that's what I was too, between freshman year and the first year of sophomore in college, we made $2.2 million, and that's how I got started. At that point, I wanted to go to school, but I also wanted to trade. So I wanted to trade when I was 21, but I also wanted to have a backup plan, which most people don't have. What happens if trading doesn't work out? So I convinced a friend of mine who was also pretty intelligent, and her and I were accepted into the 5-year sub-matriculation program, which is where you get your MBA in 5 years, 3 years undergrad, 2 years grad, and they take like 10 kids a year. And since I had a good, very good academic profile, and I was crazy, as you can tell, both her and I got accepted. And I promised her that I would pay for her college education. I would get her a job working for me after college. And I graduated summa cum laude, undergrad and grad, wrote my thesis paper on a trading model, which we still kind of use. And that's how I got started.
When you were 21 and you were in the silver pits, what was that like?
It was, chaos. But the difference between being in the silver pit at 21 and everyone else who was trading is I had created my thesis paper on a methodology of trading. Most people were just reacting, which is what 90% of people do. But when you had a method to create, it gave you more confidence. And confidence, as you know, in any type of investing, if you feel like you have an edge, you kind of have an edge. It's when you don't have a game plan is when you're an investor or a trader when you run into trouble. If you don't know where you're getting out if you're wrong, which is what the whole thing is about, then you shouldn't be. Then it's very hard to trade or invest because you have no idea where to get out if you're wrong. You have no idea how to measure risk reward. So the good thing about what I had done was I created a system where I could know exactly where I was getting out if something was going against me. So, and as long as I was disciplined enough to follow that, it kind of helped me out.
Do you still teach your traders now the ACD method? Is this the same thing we're talking about, or is this a predecessor version?
The ACD method that I wrote a book on 7 years ago has evolved. So I would say that's like a book that's like an elementary school book. But now, like the college level or the doctorate level is a lot more complicated, but all based on those same principles. And we don't take as many traders as we used to. I have my core group of people that have been with me forever, like 25, 30 traders. I take a couple a year. My son runs a group who's 33. My stepson, who's 16, who goes to school down in Miami, I corrupted him at the age of 12. So he'll be trading by the time while he goes to school, hopefully at Penn, but he'll be trading. I got my 6-year-old who knows how to play poker with me online and has played with me during COVID in all the online tournaments. And I would even let him play some of the hands which are insane by himself at 5, and he knows how to play, because this is all about expected value, risk reward, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So as you can tell, this is not a normal environment, but we make it work.
It sounds like a good bloodline, smart genes.
Right. Well, smart or crazy or both.
I can respect that. How about from a risk management standpoint? How important is risk management in every trade?
You see, the thing is, risk management is everything. And if you don't have risk management, there's no way that you could trade or do anything. If you and I were going to open up, I don't know, a pizza store, and I was this, and I said, Kevin, give me $300,000 because I'm going to open up this pizza store in Miami. The first question you should ask me is, well, how much can I lose? And what's the probability of me losing? And before everything else. But that's not the way the world works today. The world works is, well, how much can I make, right? In my mind, the making takes care of itself. Where people run into trouble is not being able to define their risk. And luckily for me, everything we do is define risk. What I do though, just as to your viewers out here, is like, when you do this and you're so disciplined, you're gonna get stopped out on lows, and it's a very humbling, humiliating process when you're always gonna where you're getting out if you're wrong, and you have to follow it. So once in a blue moon, my wife and I, we go to the casino, we go to Vegas, wherever it may be, because there it's like, to me, legalized drugs. I can take X amount of money and do everything that I don't do at work. Because if I did any of that stuff at work, I'd be broke. And to people watching this podcast, it's all about, can you go ahead and create defined points of risk where, what are you risking? What's the expected value? What can I make? Why do I think I can make it? What's my edge in the trade? What's my edge in the investment? And that's it.
I mean, I think that's the most important thing anybody who's listening can learn from, because most of our viewers are financial advisors, retail clients. They don't live in the commodity world, but even in equities, risk is so important. We're thinking like, how much can we make? Exactly what you're saying. It's so easy to buy something. It's fun and awesome to buy, but having a sell discipline, whether it's to the upside or downside, is really, really difficult for most people. So if you take the emotion out of it like you do, I mean, that's a lesson that we can translate into our world very easily.
You know what happens to a lot of people also, what I find, the futures market and the crypto markets trade like, it's like equities on steroids, although there's some equities that trade, crazy too. So if you can define your risk and define it well, people say, well, how do you know when to get out of something if it's going up? Well, if I talk to, let's say, my community of peers, and I say, why is this going up? And they say they have no idea, it's usually going up a lot more. But when someone calls me up and says, blah, blah, blah is up because of this, when they kind of think why it's going up, even if it's going to go up anymore, it's time to hit the button and sell half the position. Right? Because whenever you think it's going to happen, after you figure it out, that's time to get out of here.
Are you trading crypto?
We trade everything. We trade, as long as we trade power, nat gas, every commodity, most of the energy, where we trade the grains, we trade cattle, we trade hogs, we trade sugar, we trade cotton, we trade, natural gas is obviously what we spend a lot of our time in. We trade, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana. I got people, as long as it moves. Where we lose money is when something doesn't move, because we're not volatility traders, but we need the juice in order to make it go. We're not call sellers. We're not going to go ahead and sell straddles. We're not going to go ahead and say, let's collect income. We go for, we look for asymmetric opportunities, like in the power market last year, when power went from $70 in a week and a half to 9,000, right? Right, in ERCOT power. We have meteorologists that work for us full time. We try to create an edge. Again, we're wrong, I would say, almost as much as we're right. Well, if you're wrong and you lose, this, and you're right and you can make this, over time, you're becoming the house.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Are you hoping for a cold winter?
You see, that we're hoping for a cold winter only because it'll give us more opportunities. Again, hoping is a bad word in investing, right? You got to look for points where I'm going to risk X to make Y. I mean, I think that the country as a whole has no idea what's about to come to it with, in terms of energy. I think that the green revolution that's going to take place in the next 10 to 15, 20 years in this country, people think they're going to snap their fingers and it's going to be here tomorrow. So if you and I own, dirty fuel, coal, oil, nat gas, or maybe, and we're going to go ahead and you're going to say, okay, we're going to carbon tax you, we're going to disincentivize you from producing, and we don't, and we don't replace our, spend money on capex to replace our reserves. And if the carbon and if the clean energy, wind, solar, is not ready to take over, doesn't have it, and it's not just renewable but reliable in terms of this, if we're not, that disconnect is going to create a period of time where the old energy is going to go through the roof. I mean, that's why natural gas at $5 this year, when it goes $5 this year, sometime in the next couple of years it's going to go to $15, $20 in this country. It's already $30 overseas. At some point, crude oil, which is $80, right? It could go down to 75. They release the SPR. They don't release the SPR. But if you don't have enough, reserves in your tank, and you're not ready to go to clean energy, the price of oil is going to go to $150, $200. It has to, because the only way to get demand destruction is to price everybody out.
How long would it take? I mean, I'm not totally convinced that you can go from where we are today to this clean, renewable energy in 10 or 15 years. I mean, sometimes I'm thinking this could be a 50-year endeavor. Is that crazy?
I don't see. The thing is, I know what I know. I don't know. I don't know. I know what I don't know. And to be frank with you, well, like once every 3-4 months, I go on CNBC, one of those shows, and they always try to ask you questions to pin you down. And they get frustrated with me because a lot of times I say, I have no idea. Right? So do I know it's going to take 15 years? I have no idea if it's going to take 15 or 50. I can tell you it's not taking 3.
Right.
That's all I know. I don't know if, I'm not in that space. I don't know if it's taking 15, 10, hike 50. All I know is it's not happening in the next 3 years. And if the world's going to, create this situation where we're going to disincentivize people from producing in this country, at the same time, while Africa, to expand their quality of living, needs more dirty, energy, while China and India are not going to be cutting back relatively, right? Where Russia has this pipeline that they're using as, energy blackmail, or they're at least trying to, although I don't even know if they really have the energy that they actually say they have to produce, whatever it may be. In an environment where oil and gas accounts for 3 or 4% of the entire overall capitalization of the stock market, okay? This is a freight train, looking to happen. I mean, I don't know if you're familiar with what happened with ERCOT Power in February in Texas, but that's a perfect example. Texas was going to rely on renewables to, wind and solar to go ahead and make up, for the electricity that was, from the turbines. And then when the cold weather happened and they were not winterized, right? When the weather happened and you had this freak storm, power went from $70 to $9,000 on a cap, and people got blown out of the water. That was
I think there was also people who didn't have power for quite some time.
Yeah, and the utilities, people went ahead to save 10-50% of their bills. They went to these companies that guaranteed them a flat price, in return for paying a little more. But they didn't realize that those companies were not to hedge them, and they couldn't. And when the cogen plants all shut down, they all went broke. In the UK 3 weeks ago, I had friends of mine that were sitting on lines to get gasoline in their car. Power in the UK costs $32 the equivalent of natural gas here, and we're complaining about $6 natural gas. To some degree, we're all spoiled. It's part of the whole, what I call the entitlement, era we live in.
Yeah, it's more than some degree. Can you trade power?
Yeah, you can trade power on futures on the market. On the Intercontinental Exchange, you can trade it on the CME. It's thin, and I would not recommend it to anybody who on your platform. But yes, you can trade it.
Talk to me about the difference between trading in the pits and doing everything online and remotely. I was thinking, I took my son to the New York Stock Exchange maybe a year before COVID, and it was like an amazing museum, beautiful and functioning. Yeah, but I also took him to the Indianapolis 500 Raceway that same year on non-race day. And it was very reminiscent of like this awesome mausoleum. But, if you're not there when the race is going on, it's not quite as exciting. Is there an advantage or disadvantage now?
No, you know what it is? A lot of people on the floor got spoiled because it was a huge advantage seeing the bid offer spread on the floor. And they didn't make the transition off the floor. But when you made the transition off the floor, you had to be one of two things. You had to be a quant who can go ahead and and do all the regression studies and all the and know your math so that you can just learn out your day. Or you had to be what we were. And what we were was we always spent money to learn electronic trading. But in terms of that, what you really need to do is there's 4 steps in the decision-making process. Accumulate data, analyze, decide, implement. And whether you're on the trading floor, whether you're trading on a screen, whether you're the race car driver at the Indianapolis 500, right? Those are the 4 steps: accumulate, analyze, decide, implement. And the faster and the better you are at it, and the more you can help, the quicker you can do it, and the more input you can take into your mind. So like if you could be a point guard and you could see the entire field and react to 30 things at once, as opposed to just being, we'll have blinkers on and do one, the better you can trade as long as you have discipline. One of the traders that we had from a long time ago, I hired 2 traders, I remember this is a while ago. And one of the traders is a street kid, very smart in math. And I met him because with my little kids, he was an ice cream truck driver during the summer, I was in college. And I would see 50 kids go to his truck at the same time and all ask bark orders to them. And he'd be able to handle the whole thing. You order this, this, and this, you order this, this, and this, you order this and this, $2, $3, $4, they can handle it. At the same time, I was introduced by my ex-brother-in-law to someone who went to Harvard Law School. Super genius, right? Super thorough, whatever it may be. And I hired him. Well, I could tell you, which kid do you think made $40 million and which person was out of the business in a year and a half? The ice cream truck vendor went on to make $40 million, and the Harvard trained person ended up becoming a M&A lawyer, down the road.
Something to be said for street smarts.
Yeah. Something to be said for being organized, managing your time, knowing how to evaluate risk, and the 4 steps: accumulate, analyze, decide, implement.
I love it. We learned a lot about your background and the charitable endeavors that you're involved with. And as successful and incredible as you've been in the professional trading world, it seems like you've been as giving, as involved with the charities, both in New York and what you're starting now in South Florida. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you got involved with that?
Well, a couple of my friends currently own NBA and NFL teams, and like if you can't own those teams and you don't want to own those teams, and it's something, even if you could, helping kids out, right, and helping them realize their dreams, especially kids that come from less fortunate backgrounds, is what it's all about. I'm not going to all my kids are healthy. They've all been spoiled by me to some degree. They'll tell you they weren't spoiled. I'll tell you they were spoiled. It doesn't matter. But the point being is, you need to give back. And to me, I was saying, okay, how can I give back in a way that and create the most value? So what we did was, let's see, my son said, when he was like, it must be 20 something years ago, there was a program in Long Island that was a basketball program that ran into trouble financially. And we took it over and we've been running it for the past 20 years. Where I don't run it. I basically, help manage it. And I'm the quote unquote money guy behind it, for lack of a better word. And over the years, that program has flourished. And they've gotten over we've gotten over like 550 kids, partial or full Division I scholarships. We have kids in the NBA now. We have kids that go to, let's say, the Ivy League Rookie of the Year came from our program last year. The Big East Rookie of the Year came from our program. We have kids that have gone to Harvard, kids that have gone to Stanford, kids that have gone, to St. John's. I don't mean St. John's in a bad way. But my idea is how many kids we can help and what's our return on investment. How many college scholarships we can get. And it's a rewarding experience, because when you help kids and you don't want something back in return, and you're not an agent and you're not in their head and you're not really telling what to do, it's a great experience. I have one of our players who is in the NBA. A couple of years ago, he came into town with his team that was from the West Coast, and I got a phone call, 911 on my phone, from the person who runs our place in Long Island back then, and he said, blah 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 just showed up with the entire Sacramento King team. He went ahead and he took over all the courts, and there's like 300 kids here playing 300 on 15 on all 3 courts with the kids. He brought out the entire snack bar for whatever, gave away every single thing in the snack bar. You're seeing the kids and telling them, about the value of your working hard and doing the best you could and not doing any drugs. And he was telling them stories about you, and that makes you feel good. You know, it's a way of giving back. You know, where you're not going ahead and sitting there in a meeting and raising your, you know, bureaucracies don't work for me. Don't, maybe they work for some of your viewers, but this is a way of doing this in a way that you're helping kids is the best way to feel good about yourself, in my opinion.
And you started this in South Florida also?
We started in South Florida, and we've had a couple of issues with the South Florida program, but we're getting through them. But we had a program in the recent past. We had a student coming from an area which is the equivalent of a really bad area with great parents, who was supposed to go to, let's say, a mid-level, non-academic school, but to play basketball and full ride. And instead, with our help, he is now a sophomore, and he's in the starting 7 rotation for the school. And he's the first kid that I know from that area. I mean, I'm talking about a really bad, poor area, and he goes to Notre Dame.
That's awesome.
Right. So that's what it's all about for me, you know, what you can do.
It's full circle, you know, it's coming up the way you did with just an incredible moxie. You know, who has the balls to knock on the door of a trader at 12 and 13 and say, give me a job.
Right.
And I also don't believe, I think you might have fibbed a little bit about the Vegas trip. I mean, if I'm a Vegas casino, I'm not letting you sit at my blackjack table, not with that savant mind.
No. The problem is, again, when I play the poker tournament, I play these poker tournaments a couple times a year, and believe it or not, I've played in South Florida against some, the pros, people you see.
Yeah.
And I made it 3 years ago with all these lunatics who play every week. I made it to the final table. I was a chip leader on TV with people that won $80 million, and I finished 4th and won, whatever, a couple $100,000. But the point being is, you realize everybody needs an outlet, And so to me, whether it's working out physically, mentally, doing something, whatever it may be, in a healthy way, going ahead and having an outlet. So when I go to Vegas, net, I think I'm down a little money over the whole time, but I'm lucky because, but I'm looking to win the entire casino, right? I'm not looking to win that. And it's not going to happen. But that allows me the release to go back and come back to reality and say, okay, we just got stopped that at this corn soybean spread. We just got stopped that in that gas. We got stopped that, stop that, stop that. The idea for the people who are investing and more for trading is you have to be like a prize fighter, right? You have to be able to take punches, take the jabs, but never take the knockout punch. And if you can survive the jabs and not the knockout punch, you're going to be successful.
That's perfect. I think that's just a perfect ending.